The main topic, Julian Sayin, not going to USC, going to Ohio State. And that, of course, is the bridge to the larger topic of USC NIL being AWOL. And it just keeps on happening. The hits just keep on coming. And the point I have to make at the start of this conversation, of course, Tim and Mark are going to weigh in with their thoughts. But look, Ryan Day just had a failed season at Ohio State. I mean, it wasn't a terrible season. And I know Mark's deal about, we can't
the tiger.
We can't view 11-1 as a disgrace, and I get it, and it's fundamentally true. All right. But like, he did fall short of the mark. He did fall short of what was expected. He lost a third straight game to Harbaugh. And of course, there's also this talking point that Ryan Day went 0-2 against Harbaugh with CJ Stroud, who lit up the NFL this year, is this absolutely luminous talent. We can see in retrospect that he did not make great use of CJ Stroud's talent. And now the Peach Bowl, Ohio State, Georgia was the exception. You got maximum Stroud in that game. Like the guy that we saw this season with the Houston Texans, we saw that in the Peach Bowl against Georgia. But we didn't see that guy regularly at Ohio State. We saw him against Michigan State and in a few other games when he was a flamethrower, but not on a relentlessly consistent basis. And then Ryan Day, wobbles at the end of this past season. He made the very savvy and astute hire of Jim Knowles as defensive coordinator. That paid off for him in a really big way in 2023. But overall, like, he did not reach the expected standard. And so, the way Ohio State's season concluded, and I know a lot of players opted out, but nevertheless, 3 points against Missouri in the Cotton Bowl. You're Ohio State. Your backups should be good enough to score 17, 20 points against Missouri. And that's not enough. No offense to Missouri. I'm just saying an Ohio State offense with, the depth of talent and quality, you shouldn't be scoring 3 points really against anyone. I mean, maybe not. Okay, 1985 Chicago Bears. Okay, fine. You score only 3 points, but anybody else, you shouldn't be. And so it all brings me back to the main focus. Ryan Day was not exactly riding high, okay, with like the understatement of the decade, of the century. And yet, after that underwhelming performance and those underwhelming final notes against Michigan and then Missouri in the bowl game, Ohio State is just like a tsunami, just absolutely swamping the competition on the trail and in the portal. Julian Sayin being the latest example of that. It just underscores the point. Like, these recruits aren't saying to themselves, let's be real talk. These recruits are not saying, oh, I just have to play for Ryan Day. Oh my God, it's the opportunity of a lifetime. I just have to be able to seize this moment to play for Ryan Day. Come on now. We know what's going on. These guys are not beating down the door, scrambling to Columbus to play for Ryan Day. All right? It's the bag. And that bag in Columbus is in such marked contrast to the crickets that you see at USC with its NIL program. All right? And the nuance here is that, if Alex Grinch was still around, okay. Like I don't want to touch Alex Grinch with a 39.5-foot pole. These guys are losers. They're unserious about football, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Lincoln Riley spent the past month proving he's serious. He gets it. He's learned his lesson. He's repented. Saul on the road to Damascus. The scales have been removed from his eyes. He's got religion. Okay, Lincoln Riley, elite defensive coaching staff, USC, let's roll. Let's bring in these studs. And it's not happening. And it's not happening to a severe extent with Oregon and Dan Lanning after, losing to Kalen DeBoer twice. And again, slipping on the banana peel in a really big game. Ryan Day losing to Harbaugh in Michigan, again, in a really big game. I mean, with Lanning, I can at least get the idea of, wow, he cut some great videos. That Oregon social media team, they're very media savvy. They get the PR battle. But Ryan Day, I'm sorry, what is there? There's no there. And yet Ohio State is just absolutely dominating the recruiting and portal spheres. It underscores the extent to which USC is just getting sandblasted in the NIL game. And you just have to wonder what athletic director Jen Cohen is trying to do behind the scenes. I mean, she has to know this problem. Lincoln Riley has to know this problem. Riley and Cohen together have to have some sense of what needs to be done. But all USC fans are wondering, when is this rocket ship going to take off? When is USC, with an elite coaching staff, a staff that's been rebuilt, like the Alex Grinch, Dante Williams, they're in the past now. Like, this coaching staff should have maximum credibility. And yet in the NIL space, you're just not seeing the results to show for it. So that is certainly front and center in terms of the topic of the moment at USC.
Well, there is a lot. Speaking of a lot of a lot to talk about. Our old buddy Lane Kiffin had a little run. I'm sure it had nothing to do with Judkins, by the way, going to the Buckeyes. But what they're doing with Judkins, and Will Rogers, and then Caleb Downs, and now a second guy from the Tide, Julian Sayin, right? I mean, they are realizing. I think Mark will probably opine on this, but I think he's feeling the pressure, and I think Ohio State's feeling the pressure, because for a long time they've been the big dogs, but all of a sudden this thing's turning around a little bit on them. You have the game going to the guys, the team up north, right? And now a national championship in their back pocket. I think nothing can wake up a fan base like your rival starting to turn the tide on you. And I think that there was a call to arms, and like a great program and like great fan base, they said, enough of this, fill in your expletive. We're going to do something about it. And they did it with their pocketbooks. And I'm telling you, they are really invested. You guys, the Buckeyes have a lot coming back this year, and then adding a Caleb Downs on the back end with their front seven, and then strengthening their secondary. I am really glad we are not playing the Buckeyes this year, because they're pissed, they're loaded, and if they can figure out the quarterback and offensive line situation, they have to be your favorites for a national championship, in my opinion, this year. Just what they have going, unless Ryan Day messes it up. I'm kidding, Mark. I'm kidding.
What? I don't know why I got any kind of reputation as a Ryan Day defender or apologist. I'm pretty neutral on Ryan Day. I think I pretty much acknowledge his high points and his down points and his flaws and his issues, plus what he's done with the program, which is win, other than, some sore spots, of course. I will only take the point of let's start with the Lane Kiffin post, of which I believe it wasn't his original post. I think he reposted something that pointed out the supposed $13 million spent by Ohio State. But I'm kind of scratching my head, because Lane Kiffin and his program did, and maybe still do, have the #1 transfer portal class. They're shelling out money.
Oh, yeah.
So all we have to do is run the calendar back 1 year, and Lane Kiffin was complaining about Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M. So if there are individuals, coaches, programs that are spending more or out recruiting Lane Kiffin, then he seems to be annoyed and aggravated by this and has to whine about it, as opposed to the other 80 or 90% of the country that could point their finger at Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin and say, we don't have that kind of money. Do they whine and complain about that? I don't see it elsewhere, but Lane Kiffin seems to be the one that takes up this. Well, they spent $13 million. Well, what's the magic figure? I don't know what Ole Miss has spent. Let's say they've spent $8 million. Is $8 million too much? Is $13 million too much? Who is Lane Kiffin to point out, well, $13 million must be too much?
Mark, what you're doing is you're doing what he wants to do. He's just needling. I mean, he
Oh,
knows
I
what
don't
he
care.
knows what he's doing. He knows the hypocrisy in what he's saying, and he knows he can get. He's the perfect person to get. He's the master of Twitter. Don't anyone ever goes up against that guy on Twitter, you're gonna rue the day. But I
I
get
don't
what
know
you're
about
saying.
that. I don't know how that's benefiting. If he wants to be the king of Twitter, if that's his ultimate goal,
Well, that's
go
not his
at it.
ultimate goal, Mark. I'm just
Go at
saying.
it. Be the king of Twitter. But I don't know what he's accomplishing for his mission as the head coach at Ole Miss by stating stupid things and going after other coaches and doing what he did this week. I don't know what that accomplishes.
No.
Okay.
Humor.
I want to clear the air on something. Got some people in the chat saying that I'm an Ohio State hater. You know what? I'm making a very specific point. It would be just as true if this was happening to Harbaugh at Michigan. After all, Harbaugh was losing a lot of games to Ohio State a few years ago before he flipped things around. This would be to anybody in the same situation with the same dynamic unfolding. I'm making the point that after a coach has had three in Day's case, three relatively, less than fully inspiring, less than fully successful seasons, the logical instinct, just in a 2+2=4 kind of way, is to think that players are not beating down the door to play for that coach. It doesn't have to be Ryan Day or Ohio State. It could be anybody. Like it could be, okay, just to underscore the point. Let's take Brian Kelly and LSU. Did not hit the mark this past season. Like if LSU was somehow, scoring all these amazing, fantastic, spectacular, over-the-top wins and recruiting in the portal, I'd be saying the same thing. So it's not just Ohio State. It's just that it happens to be at Ohio State where a coach who has underwhelmed is nevertheless crushing the competition in the major battles, and that points to the NIL operation being robust. That's not hating. That's pointing out the dynamics of situations. When players look at certain coaches, certain teams, certain schools, and they see patterns of less than fantastic or amazing success, and yet they're predominantly flocking there, that tells me they're not going there for the coaching acumen and player development more than anything else. And like players can choose what they want. They can choose the bag. They can choose the player development in the NFL route. They can choose, certain specific things about various programs. It's not a criticism if they want the bag, all right? Because like I've long supported the idea that players should get paid, their market value should be fully realized. Hey, like that's a legitimate aspiration. That's a legitimate goal. So I'm not even knocking the player. I'm just pointing out what the dynamics are. When you see a coach who has not been hitting home runs on the field and he's hitting grand slams in the portal and on the recruiting trail, I'm just trying to connect the dots, folks. That's not being an Ohio State hater.
I'll connect the dots though in this way and push back to a certain extent. I'm not going to get into the bag dropping aspect of it. I will only say this. I believe that the players should be paid in another way. I don't agree with this because it's not what NIL was supposed to be. So as American citizens, they should have every right and freedom, just like anybody else, to earn money aside from their playing ability, but to be able to parlay that celebrity into, that's what that was supposed to be. And now it's become, come to our university, play for our team, and here's your fill in the blank, what the number is. The only thing about this whole windfall of talent coming to Columbus, whether that be through traditional recruiting or these transfer portal acquisitions, would be this is not Ole Miss circa 2013-14 when we then found out Hugh Freeze and all of that business was going on because he's getting Laquan Treadwell, the number one wide receiver in the country, and Laramie Tunzel, the number one left tackle. And okay, Ole Miss is usually 25th, 30th in the country in recruiting. And all of a sudden, they landed 5 number one players at their positions. Ohio State always is a top 3 or 4 recruiting giant. So that's not changed, and they were operating in the old system with that same success. Now, in terms of the transfer portal, who knows? They were very much taking a calculated approach this time last year and the year before during the offseason. Just say, okay, there's a player that we could use. Let's go after him. And they weren't just taking this massive run at all these players. And then again, when it comes to your point is well taken, as most Ohio State fans expect championships, both conference and competing seriously for national championships, if not winning them. So your point's well taken, Matt, but I'm just, how many programs would look at the last 3 seasons, which are 11-1 seasons in the regular season, as failures or disappointments? Like, they're operating at a very small margin, and I can only think of 2. Even the team that just won the national championship, they don't operate at that level. They still don't, even with a national championship now won. Michigan fans would have to admit they don't operate at the same expectation level as Ohio State, because they haven't racked up 11-1 seasons for the last 15 years.
But it does. The fan base does. And I'll tell you, from a fan base in the latter years of the Pete Carroll, you would literally hear people say, "Oh, another Rose Bowl. Oh, we're going to, if it was BCS or bust. Oh, yeah, all we did was want a Rose Bowl. We didn't win a national championship." When you get to that level, your own fan base starts going, "We're tired of being the bridesmaid." Hey, especially when the guy next door just took the prettiest girl in the town and married her. You also want to, get on there and get what you could get as a fan base. So I think it is ratcheted up. I think that's why we're seeing this commitment twofold. You're right, Mark. I mean, it's not like you guys were not one of the top recruiters in the country for I don't know how long, but even more so, what we're seeing here in this offseason, you guys haven't had an offseason like this ever before. And I think there's a reason for it. It's because they've turned it up.
They're throwing money at it. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm not denying that.
And by the way, I'm proud of you guys, because you know what? We keep hearing that, we're into retention. We're putting our money to keeping, and we're doing this roster management. We're keeping, well, guess what? You don't think Ohio State's not throwing millions of dollars to keep their roster together? They're already there. Absolutely. Those guys could go to a lot of different schools. So they're doing both. They're bringing in new talent, and they're also taking care of their guys. And again, I think it needed something. This might be the thing. This might be the catalyst. Michigan might look back on this going, "Oh shit, well, we won that national championship, but man, we really pissed off the Buckeyes and they got rolling." So I mean, it would be interesting to see if they are able to turn all this offseason, which again, you look at the guys you brought in. I mean, with the exception of bringing that, I don't know why I get about the Alabama center in. I've got no idea, but besides that, I'm just messing around. Besides that, it's just been an upgrade for a team that already was loaded and coming back with a lot of people. Again, the wild card is going to be, can the quarterback thing get figured out? And I think with those running backs, I want to see, with Henderson and with Judkins and then Will Rogers running this just like, God knows if they can get creative with that. I don't think anyone's gonna be able to stop you guys. So I'm going to be interested to see that offense. And you guys have done everything what teams should be doing. I'm just saying the motivation. USC fans, there is a thing called House of Victory. Get out there, even in the smallest contributions you can. They're taking small contributions. If you guys are talking about recruiting, why are we getting these guys? How about throwing a couple bucks towards the House of Victory and helping our NIL to get stronger? Because I'll tell you what, they're doing it at Michigan. They're doing it at Ohio State. They're doing it at Ole Miss. Why don't we do it here at USC?
All 3 of us can think of, especially in the professional level, of course, since this has only been a thing in college for a couple of years, where these super teams have been put together and they usually don't work. The Philadelphia Eagles about 10 years ago went on a free agency run one-off season, and they were just supposed to be loaded. It didn't work. And other various teams, certainly the New York Yankees throughout the 1980s and early 90s, bought teams that didn't perform, but were the highest paid. So there is the intangible of, are these guys going to have the incentive and the motivation to play together? And then also the coaching is going to have to be top notch.
Hey, thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe for daily USC football content. Fight on.